The Bogosity Podcast, early and ad-free. Become a subscriber at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Use the links at donate.bogosity.tv.
Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for the week of October 19, 2025. The podcast that ain't misbehaving. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's sanitize the news of the bogus. As we've shown in several stories, AI itself is neither good nor bad. It's all in how it's used. This story is about another bad use. The linked article goes over a case where a woman needed medical advice about her kid's rash, so she wanted to send the kid's doctor a picture over email. Simple, right? Except, every time she took the picture, an AI filter that was automatically applied kept removing it. By default, maybe a lot of us would like that, but the thing is, she couldn't turn it off. Even turning off the filters didn't turn them off. And it happened on both an Android phone and an iOS tablet, both made in the last 3 years. An older iPhone was able to image the rash if you crank up the exposure under bright lighting. An old Sony digital camera and a built-in laptop camera also worked. Now imagine this had been something more time-sensitive than a rash, and you get the issue with modern cameras silently rewriting reality. The biggest problem, child, is the Google Pixel 10. In addition to numerous other problems with the phone privacy and security-wise, the 10's camera not only processes images with AI automatically, but tags them as being AI processed. That's an immediate red flag for banking and insurance systems that rely on KYC or any sort of legal evidence, photojournalism, or anything like that. And even without the metadata, tools and products designed to detect AI images are flagging Pixel 10 photos of real objects. This could also be a problem for artists. Draw or paint a picture, then take a picture of it with a Pixel 10 for uploading? Boom! AI! Not to mention the fact that it changes your art in ways you might not want. Even assuming it doesn't do that, it still gets tagged as AI, and now you're a pariah on the internet. It's also bad if your non-AI image gets wrongly flagged as AI and hidden from an internet search or removed from social media. Of course, that can happen anyway because the AI detection algorithms themselves aren't as great as they claim. In fact, some that claim 98% accuracy in independent studies perform just over 50%. Might as well flip a coin. If you are ever in a situation where you need to avoid any AI enhancement, not only is the Pixel 10 a serious problem, there's also no indication it'll be anything but the first. People take pictures for a lot of reasons other than snapping selfies to be put on the socials. It should be up to that self-same human to decide what filters, if any, get put in the result. When cameras first came out, people expressed skepticism about them, wondering if the image they captured really reflected reality. Today, that's actually becoming an issue. And the more smart a camera becomes, the less you can trust its output.
Presenting the greatest game this side of Yuggoth. You are H.P. Lovecraft's cat, and your name is Nick. Right. We can't say that on a podcast. Well, anyway, that's the point. Your name is a joke to him. So now, you are out for revenge. Using the Necronomicon, you come to the present day to buy a gun to go vanquish him once and for all. But the Necronomicon is devious, and it summoned Lovecraft's monsters as well. Now, in a crumbling world, you must fight for the revenge you seek. Fight monsters, gain allies, buy guns and armor for yourself and your team. Defeat the bosses of each level. Then get your revenge against Lovecraft himself. Play Lovecraft's cat. The link is at cat.bogosity.tv. Yeah, we're doing cat.bogosity.tv, not that other one. What, you want me to get kicked off the internet or something?
While most of us are wrestling with high prices in food, clothing, and transportation, financial pundits are screeching about another subject altogether. The Federal Reserve has done everything it can to lock in inflation long term, giving us a cumulative increase of 20% over the last 5 years. With some items, it can be well over 30%, and we're seeing that continue throughout 2025. It happened despite Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. It happened despite Trump's insistence that he stopped Bidenflation. Independently, financial pundits worry about an AI bubble, same as the dot-com bubble. And there are similarities. We have malinvestment in AI-related industries like NVIDIA, just as we did all of those dot-coms. And it's causing people to invest in, and NVIDIA to produce, more chips than are being demanded by AI projects. But let's never forget that this is never caused by irrational investors or crazy companies producing too much. This is, always and everywhere, a monetary phenomenon. Or as economist Frank Shostak put it, inflation is not caused by the actions of private citizens, but by the government, by an artificial expansion of the money supply required to support deficit spending. Government wants to borrow money to spend beyond its means, but that pushes up interest rates, so the Fed has to push those rates back down by creating cheap credit. The bubble and the malinvestment are caused by this cheap credit competing with real loanable funds, grabbing up all of those resources when there's not enough to go around. That gives the illusion that there's more demand in the economy than there is, and so that juices up the supply. That was web services during the dot-com bubble, just like it's GPUs today with AI. But the thing is, just like the dot-coms, the GPUs represent real resources with real value. They're not to blame. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis tracks the supply of money known as M2, which includes all paper money and coins in circulation, checking accounts, savings deposits, CDs, and shares in mutual funds. If you look at their graphs for M2, you see a steady increase up until COVID, where it shoots up at an unprecedented rate and doesn't stop until May of 2022. Then it was the Fed, not Congress or Biden, who decided to fight inflation by raising the federal funds rate to 5%. It had previously been 0%, and embarking on a 12-month program of quantitative tightening, selling off some $1 trillion worth of securities and bonds on their balance sheet. That shrinks the money supply by the same amount as the Fed doesn't reissue that money back into circulation. You can see all of this in the graph over the subsequent 17-month period, but what happens right after that? It goes right back up, back to an all-time high. Not only did the quantitative tightening not undo all of COVID, the subsequent increase is at a much faster rate than before. Why? It's spending, stupid! Congress didn't pull back on their spendthriftiness. They didn't embark on a surplus program to pay down the COVID debt. And even though the Fed was able to offset that somewhat, they couldn't offset all of that, and as soon as they let go, the elastic sprung back to where Congress was pulling it. Government likes inflation because it can repay debt with less valuable dollars and use the proceeds to take out even more debt. Elites like inflation because they gain more from their crony relationship with government than what they lose from money being such a tiny portion of their assets. The poor and the middle class take on the burden and higher prices of the things they need to buy when wages just don't keep up. The middle class also has the burden of their savings, a much greater portion of which is monetary than the elites, having its purchasing power depleted. So when the AI bubble crashes, don't blame Elon or Sam Altman or OpenAI or NVIDIA. Blame the Federal Reserve and, to a greater extent, Congress. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. Obama's new presidential center has been unveiled, to the absolute mockery of the internet. Set to open next spring, 5 years past the original date, of course, and double the protected price tag, no change there, and set on just under 20 acres, the 225-foot tower has gained attention of the most unkind kind. You ever seen brutalist architecture? Yeah, this is somehow worse! Seriously, are they sure they have it the right way up? Senator Ted Cruz seems to have kicked things off when he X'd, "Locating the Death Star in Chicago was a bold move." That was followed by users posting images of the building surrounded by TIE fighters or the building used as the back of an AT-AT. Others compared the building to a Borg ship and to Mega Maid's vacuum cleaner. Comparisons were made to Deep Thought, who computed the famous answer of 42, and to a Bogon ship, described by Douglas Adams as a slab-like something. Another put the Eye of Sauron on top, while others put it next to the Easter Island heads. No reference to classic Doctor Who could be found, probably because Raymond Cusick would never have designed anything that boring and uninspired. Several people pointed out the similarity of the tower to gray trash bins. One user found a disturbingly similar kitty litter pail. Still another made it the centerpiece of the album cover for Who's Next by The Who. This is why you always look at the instructions before putting together your IKEA furniture, so that it doesn't end up looking like that. I mean, I know Obama took a lot of inspiration from the Soviet Union, but the architecture is just a bit too far. I don't know, maybe it was designed by a beginner to Minecraft? We don't seem to have a real explanation as to why the building looks like that. Plenty of theories, though. But an eyesore that ran years over and twice as expensive? Kind of fitting given the man's administration. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now it's time to discolorate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. My main system runs Windows 10. Microsoft now says they will be pushing down no further updates for it. Hey, Microsoft, do you promise? Also really glad I didn't make the move to Windows 11, because no sooner do they cut off updates to Windows 10, but they mess up 11 big time. I'm not even talking about things like forcing AI facial recognition in the OS and only allowing people to turn it off 3 times a year, which is a thing they did. Go look it up. No, they made a completely dunderheaded move as only Microsoft can. They broke localhost. Basically, if you need to make an internet call to your own computer, you use localhost, usually by using the IP address 127.0.0.1. Except that, after this update, that just stopped working and you got a connection error. Yes, that means your computer cannot connect to itself! I mean, how? Web designers use this all the time to test web pages locally, but it's also used by other developers as well. It's also used by software developed to run in a web browser even though it's locally run, like a lot of open source AI software. The culprit is the October 2025 cumulative update, and users have not only reported the problem en masse, but many have posted that uninstalling the update restores functionality. Frustratingly, a lot of developers on Stack Overflow have had their posts locked because I have no idea why, actually. Microsoft very silently acknowledged the issue and put out a hotfix to it. Actually, it wasn't a hotfix. Weirdly, it was in the Microsoft Defender definitions. But that wasn't even the only issue. The Windows 11 media creation tool also stopped working, affecting 10 users trying to upgrade, and they also EOL'd Office 2019 and several of their server products. So, in the span of 1 week, Microsoft broke its own installer, cut off local development and many other apps at the heels, and in the course of insisting that users upgrade, clearly demonstrated how fragile their Jenga tower of an ecosystem is. Guess that's what happens a decade or so after downsizing your entire quality control team to 0. But seriously, losing localhost? I mean, losing the localhost name resolution I can see, but losing 127.0.0.1? That's breaking a core part of the network stack! What were they doing that broke it that badly? And how did developers at Microsoft not catch it before it went out into the wild, given the developers were the most affected by it? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we'll be getting much in the way of answers, beyond Microsoft just saying, yeah, here's the patch for it. Oh well, at least we know it won't happen on Windows 10! So all of that makes Microsoft this week's biggest Bogon emitter. Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-aged children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins. And now let's hyper-immobilization-erify this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Sorry, folks, you're just not going to believe this one unless you hear it for yourself.
I guess I'm thinking of it, of the fact.
Oh, right. I should at least say that this is Ketanji Brown Jackson during oral arguments for Louisiana v. Calais, a case where Louisiana redistricted specifically to add a majority black district.
That remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic... Fuck, Ketanji, you're one of the highest governmental authorities in the land! Learn to speak! Sorry, I'll let it play on now. Example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
Yeah, you heard that right. She said black people are disabled. Being black is a disability. There's more to it too, but I'm going to let Edward Grime respond to the rest.
So I don't understand why it matters whether or not the state intended to do that. What Congress is saying is if it is happening, which Section 2 gives us the tools to determine, you got to fix it.
The difference is that the remedy under the ADA and other anti-discrimination laws is not stereotyping. We don't then...
It's not race-based. I take your point. But you're saying then that if the problem of no access is about race, it's just too bad because you can't have a remedy that relates to race.
Absolutely not, Your Honor. It's not whether it relates to race. It's whether the remedy that relates to race involves stereotyping voters and making assumptions about their politics and their views and their thoughts based on their race. And that's the problem.
In other words, if it's illegal to deliberately draw majority white districts, shouldn't it be just as illegal to deliberately draw majority black districts? Now, just hold your horses. I know the part you want me to get to. Don't worry, we'll get there. District 6 is this long, crinkly district that runs from the southeast to the northwest corners of the state, dividing it in like 3 or 4 parts. And one big piece of evidence that it's racially drawn is urban-rural linkage. The primary driver of districting has always been the urban-rural divide, that without districts, the most densely populated cities will make all the decisions and leave rural areas without a say. And that's been a problem going back to antiquity. So District 6 both draws a racial district and worsens the urban-rural divide. Contrast that with other laws that target discriminatory acts, which don't require the government to predict how racial groups will act or think, or in this case, vote. All right, now we get to the part that's had your attention this whole time, which is what gets her this podcast's biggest unaward. Yes, she did absolutely say that black people were disabled. In other words, just as people with a wheelchair have trouble getting up a ramp, blacks have trouble voting. We're not talking about districts that were written to take away a community of people. These are people who are in different communities. Same with people with disabilities. We don't draw weird, long, crinkly districts based on people in wheelchairs or people with autism. Yes, those people are spread out, but so are black people here, which is why the district has to diagonally bisect the state. So black people aren't only disabled, according to Jackson, they're a special category of disabled people all to themselves. The Equal Protection Clause and the Voting Rights Act were about racial exclusion, not just underrepresentation. This description of hers of blacks as disabled people isn't exactly what's being bandied about online, but if anything, the reality is worse. In her view, just as all wheelchair people need ramps, then blacks in Baton Rouge have the same wants, needs, and opinions as blacks in Shreveport and New Orleans. Put them in a meat grinder and make them all the same. And in the process, cut right through those rural areas and dilute their votes. When you're actually accommodating a disability, you don't require geographic grouping. We try to increase access everywhere, not huddle them all into one building. The ADA, for all its faults and injustices, at the very least attempted, albeit badly, to solve the problem on an individual level, and in the process, maintain the dignity of the individual disabled person. But I guess since you can't herd all black people into actual concentration camps, you have to herd them into political concentration camps, forcing them all into the same political opinion instead of placing them with people of actual similar wants and needs, like other urban or rural residents. It wouldn't be so bad if it were actually working, but 3 generations of Americans, the Xers, the Millennials, and now the Gen Zers, have reached voting age since this solution was put into place, and still, here we are. It's not just that her analogy was offensive and ill-spoken, it's that it collapses completely when you think about it for 2 seconds. Because so-called voting rights make us aggregate people together in ways we'd never do for any other set of rights, and for race in ways we'd never do for any other trait. And after 3 generations with no progress whatsoever, that's just sad. Defending it the way she did is even sadder. So all of that makes Ketanji Brown Jackson this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Just Because It Runs in the Family Doesn't Mean That Everyone Has It edition of the Bogosity podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at the Discord, Patreon, or Subscribestar, and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Walter E. Williams. If one is strategizing on how to improve the lives of ordinary and particularly the poorest black people, he wants to leave off his high priority to-do list the election of Democrats and black politicians. Also to be left off the to-do list is a civil rights agenda. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Bogosity.